run away from all the people I face with, but they just keep coming, so I just keep running, I'm racing. Maybe I should look up to my Father and make some changes, arrange some sort of meeting so that we can face it.
Good evening, brethren and guests. I hope everyone is doing well on this afternoon. I know it's such a tumultuous time we live in this COVID society where who do you believe, right? There's so many manners of information, misinformation, tactics that's being used, and it's kind of all over the place, right? Vaccinations, the jobs, the stores, even going out for leisure activities. It's all over. So I hope and I pray that everyone is well, everyone is staying safe, right? Everyone is, practicing those guidelines to make sure their families are safe, right? Because this isn't a lesson about vaccinations and COVID, things of that sort, right? It's a little bit different because recently I was looking at the news and I saw something about COVID and just between families, right? How it was just ravaging and tearing them apart, right? Where you had mother against daughter and father against son, right? I'm like, where have I heard that before, right? Where have I seen this before? And I'm just like, wow, if this virus can do this to the world, how much more than its truth? What would this truth do to the world? And it's really been fascinating just to really witness all this, because on one hand, you have so many people talking about the government conspiracies and everything that's, to look out for, and they're planting chips inside of a vaccination and just so much, right? So much. But I always find it interesting that I guess this affair of hate with the government it starts in this rabbit hole, right, where everybody kind of throws out all these wild theories, all these wild conspiracies, but every time it comes to spirituality, it stops, right? The question of, is the government lying to me, never arises. Never, ever, ever arises, right? You don't see the schools question it. You don't see politicians question it. You don't see anybody question it. But when it comes to a vaccination, that's the question. So just something to think about, something to just kind of chew on. I just thought it was interesting, like, wow, this is fascinating, right? But today, kind of want to talk about just that aspect of tearing families apart, right? Just that family aspect of it. And not just with COVID, but just with everything, right? Just with everything we go through as a society, as a people, right? Because family is the most important thing in all our lives, right? It's, whether someone is spiritually there with us or physically there with us, it's somebody we care about, and it's something that it's people we look forward to talking to and to seeing every day, right? So you got to ask yourself then, what is a family, right? In a world today, and even back then, right, we understand family as a physical component. A man and a woman come together, create a child. This is a family now, right? That's always been the identity of what's consistent with a family. But what about a spiritual family? And it's something very, very different, right? With a spiritual family, how does a physical family fit into that equation? Is it the same? Is it different? What makes it unique, right? These are some of the questions that we kind of want to go through as we go through this hour and kind of look at some scriptures and kind of pick it apart a little bit to see what's real, what's fake, how does that affect us today, right? So one family in particular that I want to kind of talk about is one that's always been kind of near and dear to me, just for the sake of, so I myself am an identical twin. I have an identical twin brother. So I remember, we'll get into the story. I'm sure we're all familiar with the story of Esau and Jacob, right? But when I first read this particular scripture, I was younger, and I was just like, that's a pretty scary scripture to read, right? Especially being a twin, like, wait a minute, this is, right? Who's Esau, who's Jacob, right? Just something that, your mind goes through these things, right? Especially when you're still trying to gather information, you're trying to gather understanding, you're trying to gather who it is you are and gather what's real versus, again, what's being just thrown out there, what's fake news, right? So if we can, Let's please turn to Genesis 25. And while we turn to Genesis 25, I really want you guys in the chat to really kind of, let's drop some fires for yourself, right? Drop some fires for yourself that you guys are here on this day to take part of this lesson, right? There's a lot of things you can be doing in this world right now. There's a lot of different ways you could be going, but you're here today to take part of this lesson. So let's drop some fires for yourselves. Let's drop some fires for our Elder Shadrach again, because without him dedicating his life to teaching us this truth, right, we wouldn't be here today. So again, just drop some fires for yourselves, drop some fires for our Elder Shadrach, right, because we want to appreciate, right, that of which we have, right? So definitely. So let's jump into Genesis 25. Let's jump into verse 21. Let's jump into the story, right? And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now, right off the bat, right? Going back, when I first read this, I'm like, 2 different nations are in someone's womb? Again, as a twin, with no understanding, how is this possible? How is this concept even real? But again, having an understanding now, right? Speaking about a spiritual family gives you a little bit more in-depth perception of, okay, I see it now. I see what's going on. I see the difference that it is, right? Now, this is interesting and unique, right? Because we know the story of Abraham and Ishmael. But this is different, because this is 2 children that are born of Isaac and of Rebekah. So just, again, something a little bit different, a family nonetheless, but different spiritually, right? Just a different concept spiritually, right? And so, verse 24, and when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So, this is very interesting again, right? 2 parents, 2 children, right? And we know, whether we want to admit it or not, right? Our parents always have a favorite, right? So, it's okay. I don't hold it against my parents. I don't know if I was their favorite. I don't hold it against them. But just that concept, again, the way we know how the world sees it, right? But these were 2 children that was brought up to serve the God of Abraham. This wasn't like they were just going out there. Esau was going to go serve his own God, just do his own thing. They were both brought up to serve the God of Abraham. So that makes this family dynamic very different and very special in a sense, right? Because again, to be chosen and to be called out is something that you can't take lightly. And it's something you definitely cannot take for granted. But even going back to that physical family makeup, even with the angel coming to Rebekah and for her to have understanding, right? Because we know Isaac didn't understand, right? He had no idea what was told to Rebekah or the nature of what was going to happen later. And we're familiar with the story, right, of what happened between Jacob and Esau. But the one thing I take away from this the most is that even with everything going on. They understood as a physical family the love they had for each other, right? Even after all the madness of Esau being upset and Jacob kind of going away to, to get away from his brother's wrath, and rightfully so, right? Understanding the context of what was going on, because hindsight is 2020, right? So it's easy to look back on and say, I would have done this, or this should have happened, or that should have happened. But again, very real situation. We deal with our physical families every single day. So we know we've been in a position where we've been upset with each other, where we didn't want to see each other, didn't want to speak to each other. So we can very much relate to this story and what's being said here. But the one thing, again, that really stands out to me as a twin, right? It's very special to me. Let's kind of jump forward, right? Again, we're familiar with the story, but as I always say, go back and read the entirety of the chapter to gain better context. So I'm going to just jump to Genesis 33 real quick. And I'm starting at verse 1. Again, this is after Jacob is away. Jacob has wives now. He has children now. Esau has a family now. They haven't seen each other for years. It's been years since they saw each other, right? And so many spiritual things happen. So many spiritual things, especially with Jacob. Right? But Jacob, again, like all of us, we want to go back home, right? Ultimately, we want to see our family. And we hope that time had passed and that time healed those wounds, right? So, again, I'll start at verse 1. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children into Leah, and unto Rachel, and unto 2 handmaids. And he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. And he passed over before them, and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. And Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. Again, the family. Can you imagine? Again, just imagine for a second. This is a brother you haven't seen, a family member, right? Doesn't even have to be a family member you haven't seen for a while. After everything was just said and done, after everything that happened, right? Ultimately, you're just like, I just miss my family. I just really, truly just miss my family. And this is something I just can't, we don't want to just take it for granted, right? Again, we know having a spiritual family is much different than having a physical family. But it's also something we don't want to just take away from us, right? Because naturally that physical family is what helped raise us, what we saw every day, kind of where a lot of our mannerisms came from, whether good, bad, or indifferent. So you can imagine that's that love that you would have for that physical family, right? To see 2 brothers, again, who at one point, one wanted to kill the other, run to meet each other, to hug, to kiss each other, and they cried together. You know what? And the one thing I love about this story so much is that even with them seeing each other, Jacob is still like, I have to go do my own thing. We have to go set up and settle in the land that was promised to our grandfather. And we still have to go do that. That's so special to me. It's so critical to me. Because in a world, and again, we can all relate today. In a world where we see a physical family every day, and we know our spiritual family and the spiritual things that we must do, and how a time comes where we must separate ourselves. But ultimately, we don't have to forget about that physical family. We don't have to cast them to the side, right? We don't have to just get so, and I know we've all been there, right? Where we get so angry and upset with our family because it's like, just get it. Just understand what we're trying to tell you. But, exercise a little bit of patience, right? Because just like us today, we know physically we're family, but spiritually we're far apart, right? But unlike Esau, it's a little bit different. because we're not of another nation. We are of under one nation, one family, one God, right? Now, a lot of us may not know who that God is. A lot of us may not understand the culture that we're from, right? That dynamic that we're from. But this is why it's keen for us, right? We know we suffer from our own stubbornness and a lack of understanding. But think about why we must have patience for each other, especially when we're looking at this in a family dynamic. Some of us were in a religious affiliation for 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years, right? And just lost. I always equated to sometimes the way we can talk to family and sometimes the way we can, kind of want them to understand, right? It's like taking someone who's lost in the desert, right? And beating them down for not knowing and understanding that they're lost in the desert. Right? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense sometimes. And again, I know it's hard when we're dealing with family and we're trying to get them to understand, again, what it is that we're doing wrong, how we can fix each other's lives, right? But the greatest example they have is you. The greatest example that your family has to understand your spiritual family is you. If you let your light just shine, right? If you make sure you're secure and you're walking that path and doing things that you need to be doing, that you're supposed to be doing, I guarantee you they're watching. They're looking. They're asking themselves, something is different. Something is very different. But again, I know how tough it can be, right? Because we know as Israelites, we're the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Our father is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. But we also understand our God gave us a set of instructions on how to set up our families and be prosperous. And, we have the examples that's often misused and misquoted and just used to kind of do things that may not necessarily make a whole lot of sense, but it's things that we must do, again, in order for us to be prosperous and understand, right? So one particular verse that I hear all the time is Exodus 20, right? And we know it's verse 12. These are the scriptures that, we'll have to turn to it. Honor thy mother and thy father that thy days may be long. And I always love this scripture because it's more or less a guarantee, right, from the God of Israel. Hey, listen to your parents. The wisdom I gave to your parents, listen to them and your days will be long. Almost give me chills, right? What other God can promise this? What other God can know that if you do this, your days will be long? But what if your parents are doing something different spiritually? Does this verse apply to you still? Does this verse somehow, if you don't listen to your parents, does that condemn you forever? And again, I'm not advocating for anybody to go out here and disrespect their parents or tell them that they're living a lie or things of that nature. Absolutely not, right? That's counterintuitive, right? It wouldn't work. It would not work. But having the right context and understanding is key when you're reading, right? So we take this verse, right? Take Exodus 20, verse 12, and let's kind of, let's jump to Matthew 12. And again, I'm going to jump around, but as I always say, make sure you go back and read in full for the right context. Matthew 12, I'm going to jump to verse 46. While he yet talked to the people, and this is Jesus the Christ, while he yet talked to the people, Behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, desiring to speak with him. Then one said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to speak with thee. But he answered and said unto him that told him, Who is my mother and who are my brethren? Wow, right? Can you imagine you standing there? It's like, hey, it's me. Right? And you hear this answer, right? But what was next, right? He stretched forth his hand toward his disciples and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father, which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Wow. Wow. You know, when we talk about family sometimes, right? And we do lose that dynamic, right? Because when you're lost spiritually, you're going to lose that dynamic of a spiritual family or of a spirituality, period. Right? Most people walk around and just, they think, saying God is sufficient. So when you see this, when you see Jesus the Christ is saying, whoever shall do the will of my Father, the same is my brother, my sister, and my mother. Doesn't matter. So spiritually, again, we go back to those questions, right? What is a physical family and what is a spiritual family? We see this verse is a spiritual representation of a physical reality. This is what we live every single day. Every single day, right? I know I'm not the only one, right? Because again, we all deal with a physical family in some capacity, right? And when we go and do certain things, right? We try to explain to them our spiritual family. That's a hard conversation sometimes. That's a very it's one of those, it's like, I'm your family. You don't understand. But I love the way Jesus the Christ just lays it out. If you don't do the will of my Father, who are you to me really? Physically, it doesn't matter. Physically, just as Abraham was called out, Abram was called out, that family no longer mattered. Right? And again, that's not to say he didn't love his family. That's not to say that you don't care for your family. But in the context of our God, of our Father, it doesn't matter. This is why it is so important that we don't necessarily get lost in the context. Sometimes we spend so much time trying to convince others of who we are and who they really are that we lose sight of ourselves. We lose sight of the goal of who we are and what it is that we're doing and why we were called out to begin with. We can't get too caught up and focused on that physicalness sometimes, that it throws us off completely. Because I know years ago, it was oh man, you're looking for anything to kind of battle with your family, to tell them that they're wrong, but then I came to realize, right, that that's love. Anyone, how wrong it is, right? Anyone that will go through the lengths to try to text you from 10 a.m. all the way to 3 a.m. to tell you how, hey, you're wrong, this is not who you are, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. Again, I know it's bothersome and it infuriates you sometimes, but I had you got to look at it from a different way. It's love, it's just misguided. It's truly, truly just misguided. But again, don't be so caught up in it that you lose yourself. But also, don't be discouraged. Exercise patience. I promise you, your walk is the greatest thing that they will ever see. Because when they see you, then it'll be like, wow, that's what you were trying to get me to see. That's what you were trying to get me to understand. I see now what it is that we should be doing. We are a minority in this world. Therefore, when people, that's why we get the looks and we get the talks. Oh, that's a cult. You don't want to go over there and do that because, they over there. Every time I hear that, I always ask the question, what is a cult? right? Nobody's walking around with hoods on. Nobody has blood across their forehead. Nobody is just the silliness. But this is all their imagination. Why? Because they're physical people. And the physical people is always going to look for a physical solution to a spiritual problem. And again, we don't beat them down, right? We exercise patience and caution. And sometimes it may take you, hanging the phone up or just walking away saying, hey, let's just talk tomorrow. Let's just do something different another day. Otherwise, it's going to continue down that process. Otherwise, we're going to continue to just argue and just really, really lose sight and focus of, again, who it is we are and what it is that we should be doing. Now, I know it becomes a testament of, and we all had those thoughts, right? We all want to see each other in this truth, right? Because there comes a time and a point and a day where, we all must pass this world. And sometimes it's a hard conversation to have, right? Especially when you have family that you really want to have that understanding to. But, unfortunately, it won't be for everyone. I know that was a hard concept for me to accept years ago. But again, right, is where the focus lies, right? If the focus is on those who are spiritually dead, then how can you truly live? But, while I was reading the other day, and I thought it was interesting reading Ezekiel, one of my favorite books to read, and just how the God of Israel looks at us, of how we treat each other, and what it is that He must do, right? So I'll share that with you. Let's jump to Ezekiel 33. And I'll start at verse 1. Again, the word of the Lord came upon me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say unto them, When I bring the sword upon a land, if the people of the land take a man of their coast, and set him for their watchman, if when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people, then whosoever heard the sound of the trumpet and take not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet and took not warning, his blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth and warn them from me. When I say unto the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die, if thou dost not speak to warn the wicked from his way, and wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. Nevertheless, if thou warn the wicked of his way to turn from it, if he do not turn from his way, he shall die in his iniquity. But thou hast delivered thy soul. Therefore, O thou son of man, speak unto the house of Israel. Thus ye speak, saying, If our transgressions and our sins be upon us, and we pine away in them, how should we then live? Say unto them, As I live, saith the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn ye from your evil ways, for why will ye die, O house of Israel? I just want to stop right there for a second. Wow. Whew. Let me just read verse 11 again. Say unto them, As I live, saith the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but the wicked turn from his way and live. Again, wow. This is the God of Israel. I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked. It hits you right here. Again, when you think about a family and you think about a father that loves his children, why would he have pleasure in our demise? Even when we're walking contrary to him, he's doing what he has to do in order to save the rest of us. I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked. Again, just a father. Talk about a father that truly, truly loves his children. Do you know how hurt you have to be as a parent, right? And I'm a parent. Do you know how hurt you have to be to kill your own children? Do you know that the hand that is forced in order to make you have to do something like that? That's not that's not a run-of-the-mill just coincidence of just like, okay, I'm just going to do this. This is just what it's going to be, and it's just going to go. And you did this. I didn't want you to do this, so now I must just kill you. That's a long process. That's a long journey to push your father into having to do something like that. Again, we sound the horn. We sound the horn, but we don't beat down the door. We sound the horn and say, yes, come serve the one true living God. But it's not it's a request. It's not it's not something we just go out and just scream and just shout to the top of our lungs, right? Although sometimes we want to. We want to go and just shake somebody and just say, listen, stop, wake up, turn away from these false gods, right? You're complaining about life and we're just like, no, stop complaining. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's not about watching TV. It's not about getting caught up in talk about fake news, right? The reality, this is the ultimate fake news. The reality that somehow the world is black and white and it's all about racism and white people control the world. Talk about the reality of fake news. And our family buys into this. And we turn and we go and we're just like, wait a minute now, it's a component. But that's just base level. That's just absolutely base level. I mean, think about it. For as much as we see our family complain about this store, I don't shop at this store, they don't treat me with respect. I don't do this, they don't treat me with respect. But if we truly felt it, how would it be a business to begin with? I mean, let's be honest. All the poison, death, and disease is in our community. Who ensures that they continue to thrive? Maybe it's me, and I'm naive, but I have never seen another nation at those businesses. I only see us. I only see us supporting it. And it's mind-boggling, right? It's just, a little sidebar, but it's just mind-boggling that we even go through that process with each other over and over and over again. And we hate each other so, like, oh my goodness, it's the violence that we enact on each other. Right? That's why I'm a big component of, I love history. I'm a big component of history. I've often said this before I had understanding, right? Now that I have understanding, it's so much more to it, right? But I used to always say that as children of slavery, if we knew our history, there's no way we can raise a hand toward each other, right? If you knew the history of being shipped in the belly of ships, the worst of the worst, with the rats and disease and shackled and chained together, right? There was no bathroom breaks. There was there wasn't sanitary. It was nothing, right? How many of us died on that journey? And that's just the voyage over here, and even to come here, and even to be put into chattel slavery, and to be shackled and chained, and to be raped, and to just go through all these different things. And today we're killing each other at an astronomical rate, right? There's nobody going up to a black community and just open fire, but us. Us were the quickest to tear each other down and the last to build each other up. Unfortunately, that's the physical family that this is the physical world we exist in, that we live in, right? We somehow try to separate ourselves from each other, but there is no separation, right? What's good for one is good for all, right? I know we like to say, well, I'm different. I'm not like them over there. I hate to say it, but hey, if one of us escapes, all of us escapes, right? You don't get to remain a slave because you love your master. No, you're free. So you go and be free. You go and do these things. Again, we don't beat each other down with the truth. We practice that patience to build each other up. And in practicing that patience and build each other up, think of how great their reward. Right? Again, kind of moving away from the aspect that we discussed earlier of a physical family, but of a spiritual family. If we build each other up spiritually, think about that. Think about building that character up spiritually every day. Think about what that does to someone, right? They have all these programs about drugs and alcohol and, all this prevention and doing that. They try to tackle it. Again, they're attacking the symptoms. They're not treating the disease. And if it won't work. It doesn't matter. I see my family every week. I see my family, and it's always the same thing, right? It's trying to, this is a problem. That's a problem over there. That's a problem. It's like, but if we're not building each other up, it's always going to be a problem. And it's not a problem that you can just solve in a matter of minutes. I get it, right? We want that problem fixed ASAP, right? Because generation after generation after generation, it's like, this has been a problem. It's been a problem. But now that we have that truth, let's go, let's walk. Let's keep those laws, those statutes, those commandments. Let's continue to build each other up. Let's join that spiritual family, right? And if you want to join this spiritual family, this Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, click the link in the description box. Please click the link, right? There is no other spiritual family but this spiritual family, right? Whether you're physical family as well or not, come and serve the one true living God. The Spirit of spirits, the King of kings, only resides here in the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. So I stopped at verse 11 because so powerful. I take no pleasure in the killing of the wicked. So I want to continue on, right? Verse 12. Therefore, son of man, say unto the children of thy people, the righteousness of the righteousness shall not deliver him in the day of his transgression. As for the wickedness of the wicked, he shall not fall, therefore, in the day that he turneth from his wickedness. Neither shall the righteousness be able to live for his righteousness in the day that he sinneth. When I shall say to the righteousness that he shall surely live, if he trust to his own righteousness and commit iniquity, all his righteousness shall not be remembered. But for his iniquity that he hath committed, he shall die for it. Again, when I say unto the wicked that thou shalt surely die, if he turn from his sin and do that which is lawful and right. If the wicked restore the pledge and give again that he had robbed, walk in the statutes of life without committing iniquity, he shall surely live, he shall not die. None of his sins that he hath committed shall be mentioned unto him. He that done which is lawful and right, he shall surely live. Yet the children of thy people say, the Lord of the Lord is not equal, but as for them, their way is not equal. Whew. Verse 18, when the righteousness turneth from his righteousness and committeth iniquity, he shall die thereby. But if the wicked turn from his wickedness and do that which is lawful and right, he shall live thereby. Yet he say, the way of the Lord is not equal, O ye house of Israel. I will judge everyone after his way. Again, right? All you can say is, wow, as you're reading this. And that understanding again. This is so powerful for our sake. This is what we live. This is what we see every day. Right? You have righteousness and you have those who live in wickedness. But the God of Israel is saying, as a family, as my children, help the wicked. Help sound the alarm for the wicked. But you sound the alarm and the wicked don't listen, it's all right. Right? You continue on in the way that was set for us in our law, statutes, and commandments, not in your own way. You can't live according to your own righteousness, but the righteousness of the God of Israel. But if the wicked just turn back from his way, again, talk about a family and a father. What father can guarantee that and can promise that? It's just so powerful. And again, it really, really illustrates the mercy that our God has for us in all that we do. Everything he does is for our sake. Everything. As any good parent would. You're going to do whatever you can to help your children. Right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's why we're here as a family, to continue to sound that horn, to continue to help each other. It is such a special moment, right? And I know sometimes it's hit and miss, right? Again, because when we get caught up in the world, right? We're of the world, we're in the world, but not of the world. So you can lose your way sometimes, right? If you're not strong, if you don't have your feet planted, right? Because we kind of turn to and fro, right? And it's hard, right? Especially in the day and age of instant news, where you may see, a Jacobite being beaten on TV. You may see a Jacobite, neck being crushed by someone's knee, or just, the social economic status of the world, just everything. It's hard. It's hard every single day, right? To almost to not point fingers, right? And to just be like, all right, look, it's them. Look at what they're doing to us. Look what they're doing to us. But sometimes we need that reminder. We need that reminder that even today, everything we see today is because as a family, as a spiritual family, we lost our way. As a spiritual family. Now, again, in this nation, we're trying to restore that. We're restoring who we are. But collectively, right? Because it's like that old saying, right? One rotten apple rules one rotten apple spoils the bunch, right? In our case, we have a lot of rotten apples, and it hinders us for the most part, right? And we try our best to straighten it up and straighten it out and be strong for each other, but it hurts a little bit, right? Because it's almost like and I know we had a conversation all the time, right? Especially when you think about even the captivity in Babylon. The ones who were good were sent to Babylon, right? That's that. I can imagine, right? The screaming, right? Just like I didn't do anything. Again, as a child, right? I got in trouble more times than I can remember, right? But you know what? Even when I didn't do anything wrong, I was still looked up as, hey, he must be guilty because he was always in trouble anyway. But sometimes it's like, hey, I didn't do anything, right? Why am I being punished for this, right? Why am I suffering for this cause? Just like even today, right? It's almost like, why are we suffering for the cause? Hey, I want to serve my God and I want to do this, but why am I suffering? And again, we have to go all the way back to Abraham and remember that covenant, right? It wasn't made with just the ones who are listening, the ones who are obedient. It was made for all. Whether they know or they don't know, it's for them, right? It's waiting for them. And that's why it's critical, again, right, that we sound a horn, but even in the process of sounding a horn, right? Again, we have to be strategic in everything we do, right? You don't want to put ourselves in a situation, right, where we go and just start screaming at people and just telling them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? That's not conducive. We don't like learning that way, right? I know I don't like being screamed at or yelled at, so I can only imagine, right? If somebody's trying to learn and they're going through that same process, right, that's not very conducive for them. So I kind of want to, well, real quick, let's turn to Isaiah. Real quick, let's turn to Isaiah 59. Because this goes in part to what we were saying earlier, right? Sometimes we forget our ways and not have that understanding, right? Kind of scream out into the world and it's like, listen to me, you know, and it's like, hey, why isn't my God listening to me? I'm trying to communicate and talk to him. I just want him to listen to me and hear me. So, Isaiah 59, behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he would not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies, your tongue have muttered perverseness. None calleth for justice, nor pleaded for truth. They trust in vanity and speaketh lies. They conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity. Man, that verse. None calleth for justice, nor any pleadeth for truth. They trust in vanity. Oh man, so many levels to this. So many levels to this. First thing that comes, again, we know the state of who we are. And we go through, you know, criminal justice system. We understand the numbers and the percentage of us in prison, right? But what do we call upon? We get in those situations, right, unjustly. Vanity, that system, that judicial system is vanity. There's no real justice within that system. There's nothing in that system. And what does he call out? None pleaded for truth. Can you imagine going through a process like that? That's very damaging to you. Who's pleading out for truth? Who's pleading out for true justice? Powerful. It's so many different, again, we understand why we're here, right? Sometimes we have to remind ourselves why we're here, right? Our God's, again, his hand is not shortened that it cannot save, and his ear is not heavy that he cannot hear. But his face is hid from us because of our iniquity. Wow. So the next time we have the conversation, or you hear someone talk about the state of the world today, right? You read that verse and have a conversation about that verse. You probably won't have any friends after that, but still, right? Again, you sound the horn. You let it be known, right? This is not a white man's power trip, right? For lack of better words, right? It has nothing to do with a white man. It has nothing to do with white people, right? I'm sorry we've been brought up again, the whole notion of the man and things of that nature, right? And there has been things in place that I'm not going against, right? That's put us in a situation. But again, that's a symptom of our iniquity that has to be there in order to get us back to our truth. And if we're focused on that symptom, how can we treat the disease? Just again, words to just kind of digest on a little bit. But you know, again, in the beginning, I asked the question, right? The spiritual family and the physical family. Can it coexist? Is it one thing, right? And again, of course, right? The answer is definitely yes, right? Again, that's the whole concept of Israel. That's the whole concept as a family. That's a nation, right? Our nation is a family. And when we move as a family, there's nothing we cannot accomplish. But one story in particular, this is one of my favorite stories because it illustrates the accountability that we must have for each other. It pulls it all together, right? So let's turn to Joshua 22 really quick. And again, I know I'm skipping around, but again, as I always say, When you have time, definitely go back and read all the chapters to gain better context. Now, story of Joshua, right? We know that Joshua was picked to lead the children into the land of Canaan, to subdue the land, and to kind of, to make sure that everything kind of goes right. And Joshua knows the people he's dealing with, right? And Joshua does some amazing things, right? So here we're kind of still going through those battles, and we're kind of, Joshua's kind of giving charge and kind of telling the children what they must do, and kind of going through that whole process, right? So, again, Joshua 22, I'm going to start at verse 1. Then Joshua called the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said unto them, Ye have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice and all that I command you. Ye have not left your brethren these many days unto this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God have given rest unto your brethren, as he promised them. Therefore now return ye, and get you into your tents, and unto the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side Jordan. But take diligent heed to do the commandment and the law, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, charged you, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cleave unto him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went into their tents. Down to the one half tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given possession in Bashan, and to the other half tribe gave Joshua among their brethren on this side Jordan westward. And when Joshua sent them away into their tents, then he blessed them. And he spake unto them, saying, Return with much riches into your tents, and with very much cattle, with silver and with gold, and with brass and with iron, and with very much raiment. Divide the spoils of your enemies with your brethren. Again, I love this whole context, right, of Joshua is talking to his brethren, right, giving them charge, but again, reminding them, right, hey, remember, right, take diligent heed to the law of Moses, and remember this, right, but even the spoils of their enemy, make sure you share it with your brethren, right, again, that strong family dynamic. What was our verse 9? And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh returned and departed from the children of Israel out of Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go into the country of Gilead, to the land of their possession, whereof they were possessed according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And when they came unto the borders of Jordan, they are in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by Jordan, a great altar to see to. And the children of Israel heard say, Behold, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh have built an altar over against the land of Canaan, in the borders of Jordan, at the passage of the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered themselves together at Shiloh to go up to war against them. And the children of Israel sent unto the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, and to the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest. And with him 10 princes of each chief house, a prince throughout all the tribes of Israel, and each one was a head of the house of their fathers among the thousands of Israel. So I just want to stop right there. So, again, right, the land is being split up. But you had the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh built themselves a great altar, right? Now, when their brethren heard about this, wait a minute. It's a big problem here, right? And why is it a big problem? We have one altar. So if you go off to build another altar, who is this altar for and who is it to? Because again, as Israelites, we have one altar. But you know what? I guess part of this, right, and we'll continue reading on, right, is the fact that they gathered themselves together to go do war against their brethren, right? This is how important this is. This isn't like, hey, they just went and did this. Oh man, they can't do this. Let's just go talk to them and let's just go, tell them they can't do this. This is this is bigger than this. If they're doing what we think they're doing, something has to go down. Something has to happen, right? For our nation's sake, we must protect each other and hold each other accountable. Verse 15. And they came unto the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, and to the land of Gilead, and they spake with them, saying, Thus saith the whole congregation of the Lord, What trespass is this ye have committed against the God of Israel, to turn away this day from following the Lord, and that ye have builded you an altar, that ye might rebel this day against the Lord? Is this the iniquity of Peor, too little for us, which we are not cleansed until this day, although there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord? Now, this goes back to, again, the day of Moses, when, again, unfortunately, the children of Israel doing things they should not be doing, right? And the plague came up on the entire congregation. So Phineas knows this. He was there. Again, it's that pleading, right? Please don't do this. Please don't do this, right? Did you think that was too little? Did you think what the God of Israel did to us was too little, that you would go and do this thing today? Again, just that you can really understand. When you read this, you can really feel the passion in which they're speaking with each other, right? Not in that sense of it's in the sense of urgency, right? But it's not in the sense of hatefulness. It's much like, hey, please don't do this. For our sake and for your sake, don't make us do this thing if you go and do this. Right? Verse 18. But that ye must turn away this day from following the Lord. And it will be, seeing ye rebel today against the Lord, that tomorrow he will be wroth with the whole congregation of Israel. Again, right? Nothing is done in a vacuum. What happens to one happens to us all. Notwithstanding, if the land of your possession be unclean, then pass ye over into the land of the possession of the Lord, wherein the Lord tabernacle dwelleth. But take possession among us, but rebel not against the Lord, nor rebel against us in building you an altar beside the altar of the Lord our God. Again, the pleading. If your land be unclean, then just come with us. Come and stay with us, but just don't do this. Please don't do this. Again, I love this story so much just because of the emotion that you see throughout this entire chapter. Verse 20. Did not Achan, the son of Zariah, commit a trespass in the accursed thing, and wrath fell upon the congregation of Israel? And that man perished not alone in this iniquity. Then the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh answered and said unto the heads of the thousands of Israel, The Lord God of gods, the Lord God of gods, he knoweth, and Israel he shall know, if it be in rebellion or if it be in transgression against the Lord. Save us not this day, that we have built us an altar to turn from following the Lord, or if it to offer thereon burnt offering or meat offering, or if it to offer peace offering thereon. Let the Lord himself require it. And if we have not rather done it for fear of this thing, saying, in time to come, your children might speak unto our children, saying, What have ye to do with the Lord God of Israel? Whew. Again, just the complexities of this. Their response to them. If the Lord God of Israel, let him require of us if we're being rebellious or not. Whew. This is powerful. This is, again, the emotion of them talking to each other. For fear, verse 24, right? And if we have not rather done it for fear of this thing, saying, in time to come, your children might speak unto our children, saying, What have ye to do with the Lord God of Israel? Man, this is not for us. We're not building this altar for us today. We're building this for our children's 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 children. That when they come up, they're going to say, who are they all the way over there? What do they have to do with our Lord God? Think about that concept of what they're thinking about. It's not about the here and now. It's not about the today, for the future, for our children's sake. We're doing this, right? Let's continue on. Verse 25, for the Lord hath made Jordan a border between us and you, and ye children of Reuben and the children of Gad. Ye have no part in the Lord. So shall your children make our children cease from fearing the Lord. Therefore we said, let us now prepare to build us an altar, not for burnt offering, nor for sacrifice, but that it may be a witness between us and you and our generations after us, that we might do the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings and with our sacrifices and with our peace offerings, that your children may not say to our children in time to come, ye have no part in the Lord. Therefore said we, that it shall be when they shall so say to us or to our generations in time to come, that we may say again, behold the pattern of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifices, but is a witness between us and you. God forbid that we shall rebel against the Lord and turn this day from following the Lord to build an altar for burnt offerings, for meat offerings, or for sacrifices, besides the altar of the Lord, our God, that is before his tabernacle. Whew. And when Phinehas the priest and the princes of the congregation and the heads of the thousands of Israel which were with him heard the words that the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the children of Manasseh spake, it pleased them. And Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest said unto the children of Reuben and to the children of Gad and to the children of Manasseh, this day we perceive that the Lord is among us, because ye have not committed this trespass against the Lord. Now ye have delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of the Lord. Wow. Wow. Just again, we often read so many stories about Israelites battling Israelites and just so much turmoil between us. Here we have a situation where both sides had the right heart and the right mind. Everything they were doing was to protect the nation and to protect the entire nation of serving the God of Israel. One saw it and said, no, you cannot do that. Don't rebel against us. And the other side said, no, this is a witness between us and you this day and for our generations to come. Powerful, powerful. When we think about a physical and a spiritual family, this is the perfect combination of what it truly means. We hold each other accountable, and we do it with love. We don't hold each other accountable just to rule over each other. Absolutely not. It's so that we can stand straight and stand tall and say, let's serve the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob together. It's so powerful. Israel, it's not a shrine in today's context, a church, right? We're a spiritual and a physical family. We remember our values toward each other. Most importantly, we remember our values, our commitments toward the God of Israel. I thank you for your time. Peace.
Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For thou hast been a shelter for me, and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings, Selah. For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Thou wilt prolong the king's life and his years as many generations. He shall abide before God forever. O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him. So will I sing praise unto thy name forever. that I may daily perform my vows. Selah and Selah. Amen. Peace, brethren, and welcome to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries Bible Study. Hope you guys are having a good time thus far in the first lesson. I hope you guys, as you're hearing this video, that the God of Israel is blessing you, protecting you, allowing you to be prosperous in your journey to understand what it means to be a child of the Almighty God. And I'm glad you chose the time to be with us today. I hope that the things that we speak about today will edify you in that journey. Thank you, Teacher Anthony, for that lesson and for introducing the concepts of family values, Israelite family values. And I'm going to continue to explore that concept and to have us, get into it in various ways. So one of the things that Teacher Anthony had brought up in his last lesson is sort of the distinction between our physical family and our spiritual family. And thank you, you did a good job about that, Teacher Anthony. Our physical family and our spiritual family. So many of us that are here, my brethren included, that are listening to me, can really relate to sometimes this tension that we may have between our families. And I don't think there's many examples of like whole families coming into Israel in this time. There are some, but I don't think it's very, very frequent. Many times, usually it's like one person in that family or a couple people in that family. And maybe over time, as was in my experience, over time, others may come in and join. But, during that time period when some are in and some are out, there can be some tensions, some confusions. So we're very well aware, and through personal experience, this sort of, again, tension between your physical and spiritual family. It's interesting because that journey of, at times, going against your physical family in order to being obedient to our Father, our spiritual Father, our spiritual family, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That's something that even Jesus Christ spoke about, and Teacher Anthony even explored that a bit and brought up a couple of those verses. And I think let me look into that as well, just to show you that what we're going through today. If you are an Israelite in your journey, if you're are intrigued or started the process of connecting with the Israelite Nationwide Ministries, starting to bring the culture into your life, starting to reject some of the culture that's out there in the world or that maybe you were brought up in, and that's causing tension in your household, in your families, understand this is nothing new. This is the journey that we go through, and even Jesus Christ speaks about that. Let's turn to Leviticus 14:26. Luke 14:26. Luke 14:26. All right. Luke 14:26. And I'll read. And this is Jesus the Christ speaking and giving instructions or an understanding about what it takes to be successful in this journey of an Israelite. If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Very strong words. There are many examples throughout the scriptures where he brings up that distinction between here's my physical family, but here's my spiritual family. And what is that distinction? Those that do the will of my Father. So if I'm doing the will of our Father and you're doing the will of our Father, then we are brethren. And that bond and that love and that connection is tighter than any physical connection could ever be, right? Doing the will of my Father. But I'm going to go on, 27. And whosoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest haply, after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him. And he goes through to give other examples of, if you're starting on this journey, really be serious about it and understand along the way there are going to be challenges, including challenges of your loved ones, individuals that you grew up with, individuals who raised you, individuals who you have fond memories about, maybe not on this journey with you. And you have to be so committed that despite those hardships, despite having to carry my cross every day, I find this to be so important, so compelling, that I am going to go this path anyway. If you're on that journey, go ahead and put sevens there in the chat. If you're on that journey and you've experienced that and you've been tested through that process of relationships and of family, coming sort of against you and putting hardships and roadblocks in your way, but yet you've persevered through to be here to this day, put sevens in there. Let people know who may be going through it right now that we understand. Right? We all are going through different paths, but we all have similar journeys where it's not an easy path, and we have to work through that and persevere so that we can be successful all the way through. So we totally understand that. But what Jesus Christ here is saying is that we have to understand there are going to be hardships along the way. So if you're looking for an easy road, if you're looking for like, hey, I can read the scriptures, understand it, and then just boom, everything will just fall into place and work out and everybody be happy for me. If that's your expectation, then you really need to adjust that, because that is not going to be the path that you're going to follow. There are going to be some challenges, but that's okay, because we all understand that, and the environment that we're building is allowing you to really flourish and to really reach your full potential and to allow you to fulfill the purpose that the God of Israel has in store for you. And it's because here's the thing. Here's the thing to think about when, again, we talk about our physical and our spiritual families. Our spiritual families, again, we are the ones who share the same Father. We both fulfill the will of our Father. Therefore, we are of that blood. And therefore, we are connected in one accord and in one spirit. And very, very, very powerful connection. The physical family that we have, again, by blood, we grew up together, so on and so forth. Don't just count them out just because they don't understand today, right? Just don't count them out. Again, I myself am a product of a family member being very patient, a family member, taking their time, sometimes with frustration. I was that roadblock at times for a family member that had first come into Israel and then introduced it to me so many, many, many years ago. But I'm thankful for that patience. I'm thankful for that persistence. I'm thankful that they didn't give up on me. I'm thankful that Israelite Nationwide Ministries didn't give up on me, but was patient, allowed me to absorb, allowed me to challenge, allowed me to, go through and sort of take my time. There are some individuals, their path is that they just heard about it and then boom, jumped on the bandwagon right away. Started down this path right away. They just saw it and they jumped on it. And that wasn't my story. I was resistant at first. I went through these various stages, first of resistance, then of denial, then of challenging, then eventually of considering, then eventually of testing, trying, and eventually of applying, and then eventually understanding and saying, this is what it's about. Now I see it. And I've gone through that process, so I know what that's like. I've been on the other side of being that physical family, not being a part of the spiritual family. So I would say, please be patient with your family. Be consistent in your commitments, because they're watching you. They're looking for the cracks that possibly is like, are they serious about this, or is this just a fad? Stay in deep prayer, and then also dig deep. Your life is a reflection of the truth of this culture. And so people may not be able to see fully exactly the meanings of the words that are here, but they can see you. And if you can be an emblem, a reflection of the wisdom of Israel, of the God of Israel, then that can be really, really effective. And not just knowledge, but understanding. Again, in my journey, I went through challenging the knowledge to then, the knowledge makes sense, to then applying that into my life and then seeing the results of that. And now I'm no longer, we can debate about this, but I am a witness. at the Israelite Nationwide Ministries, as brethren, we are witnesses to the wisdom and to the love and to the power of this culture and of this God. And that is why we're here, because we want to share that. We want to be that light. When Jesus Christ was here, that's one of the main things that he stressed so many times, that we as Israel are that light. So the more that we work in empowering ourselves with the truth of this scriptures, the more effective we're going to be as that light, in particular when it comes to our loved ones and our family. So don't count them out. They may be only physical family now, but if we're consistent, if we stay, in prayer and continue to build ourselves with this understanding and application of the law, statutes, commandments in our lives, then we are the best hope for our family members to become spiritual family members. So just want to put that out there. Okay, so another thing that, as we talk about this, Israelite family values, this topic is ripe. This topic is ripe for us to have in a discussion format. I miss the days, and I'll just be honest with you, I miss the days when we could be face-to-face, because in those type of lessons where we're face-to-face, then, the teacher can start out with a topic, but then individual can ask a question, or someone can bring a perspective into this topic that can now give it another dimension, and it can have this dynamic force of its own, where we all now are like learning something new about each other, about this concept. I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. And I love that dynamic type of learning, that dynamic way where all as a group, we're all learning and moving forward with a better understanding. I really wish that, that at this point we could do that, but we can't yet due to safety concerns. But hopefully we'll get there soon. Every time that we start to make plans, then we see that, well, the numbers out there are not quite, and we do not want to be fostering, any type of health issues for anyone. So that just be patient about that, and I'll be patient about that. But I would say, at least in this lesson, we talk about family values. I would like to, in some ways, maybe emulate that a bit, and I really want to hear from you in the comments. I know we're very good at sort of giving the sevens and the fires and giving a little one-liners here and there throughout the comments, and that's really great. But I'm going to give some opportunities here for us to do a little bit more, sort of expand on that, so that we can all learn from people's perspectives when it comes to this topic of family values. I think it's important because I want to be able to, even whether you listen to this live or whether you come back to it to listen to it, give a paragraph on some of these things. Give some bullet points on some of these things as we talk through this. You have the freedom to do that. Okay, don't write a whole page, right? Don't do that, but at least give a little bit more so that we can have a robust discussion that continues on even when this video is over. So I'm going to come back to the comments because I'm going to throw out some questions there, and I want to see what people have to say about it, and you kind of understand a little bit better as we go further into the lesson why I'm interested in exploring this type of format of a little bit more engagement from the audience and a little bit deeper reasoning in the chats. Okay, so let's start. Let's start there. I'm gonna give out this question now. So please add this in the comment. If I was to ask you, right? If I was to ask you, put your name here. Ask you, what are your family values? As an Israelite, what are your family values? How would you answer that question? What are your family values? Put it in the chat right now. I'd like to see, what that is. How do people answer that question? And I'm gonna even give a couple seconds of silence to allow you guys time to really put some stuff there. If I was to come up to you and we're face to face and we're talking, and I'm like, what are your family values? As an Israelite, what are your family values? What would your response be? Okay. All right. So I definitely want to see that. Okay. So, as I go through, and I'm always trying to go through and say, let's define things. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Let's go through and see and make sure that we're saying the same words, that we have the same meanings behind it. So sort of go through and look at family values. And a lot of times when we in this modern era, when we hear the term family values, it's usually in in a like almost a political bent, right? You sort of have liberalism, which is like, kind of free, do whatever you want, against traditionalism and the patriarchal nuclear family and those type of things. Just do whatever you want. And then you have the conservatives who sort of adopted that term, family values. But things like that offend me to some degree because I'm sort of like, how can they co-opt that when really the God of Israel, the greatest God that there is, the creator of heaven and earth, created the family and gave that family values. Right? From the very beginning, whether we're talking about Adam and Eve, and formulating from the very beginning and creating that family and creating that structure and then giving values and standards that they should live by to not only for them to be successful, but to perpetuate it from generation to generation. Our God is the author of family values. Even when it comes to forming us as a nation, Israelite nation, that the God of Israel, chose Abram and changed his name to Abraham and gave him, these specific instructions of what he should do with his household and pass on those traditions, all the way down through the generations. Even as a nation with Moses and the laws that were given to him, saying, when you go into the land and establish yourself as a nation, these are the things that you should and shouldn't do. These are the things that you apply into your life. These are the ways that you raise your children. These are the roles that men and women should have. All these values and structures are put into place. The creation of the family and then the creation of the values of that family so that family would be successful. That's our Father is the author of that. So when we have that term of family values, we should be like, that's easy. This is what we do because we are the authors of that. Others have taken it and now flipped it, for whatever reason to be able to, accomplish what they want to accomplish. But for us, as we glorify our God and be a reflection of his wisdom, of his love, we truly are the ones who should understand what it means for family values. So I went through some of the definitions that they had out there, and none of them really fully, I think, gave the right understanding. And so, as Israel, what do? We create our own. So, this is my definition, and I'm gonna mention it, and I would like to get some feedback, and so let me know if there's something you would add, take away, something you like, thumbs up, whatever. And I'm gonna go slow, so you can even, if someone is there, they can even type it out, just so it could be there for future viewers to take advantage of. Israelite family values. Definition. Israelite family values are Israelite cultural principles that are upheld, reinforced, and passed on within a family to promote the sound functioning of the family and to strengthen the fabric of our nation. Right? Let me say it again. Israelite family values are Israelite cultural principles that are upheld, reinforced, and passed on within a family to promote the sound functioning of the family and to strengthen the fabric of our nation. Let's let that sink in for a little bit. So again, this is my perspective, right? You guys can maybe have your own definition of what that is, and we'll go into a little more details in a second. But again, the idea is we have the laws, the statutes, and the commandments, and we have the knowledge and understanding of this is the things that you do. These are the things that you do, and there's some things that are real explicit, right? On the 14th day of the first month is the Passover, and we're all going to gather, and we're going to have a feast. And we're going to, feast for 7 days and a feast of unleavened bread. Real specific. These are the things you do. This is the day that you do it. This is how you do it. Okay. We have the Feast of Tabernacles, instructions of what to do. The Day of Atonement, Sabbath. These are things that you're supposed to do. But what are the things that we do in between those feast days? In living our lives, in formulating our careers, our education, our day-to-day. What are the things that are even going to do throughout those that are going to reinforce even when we do gather and come together on those holy days and those feast days? What are the principles that are upheld in our households, in our day-to-day? How do we reinforce the instructions of the Supreme Council and the teachings of our elder in our household? It's one thing, like anything else that you teach your children, I can tell them, this, but if I don't demonstrate it, if I don't create an environment that forces them to not only apply it, but also to cherish it, to really see that these things that I'm teaching you are valuable beyond anything they're going to learn out there, so that they hold it in high esteem. If I don't reinforce that and be able to figure a way to pass it on from one generation to the other, then am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a family? As we know, the family is the basic building block of our nation. So if our nation is to be strong, our families has to be strong. And if our families are to be strong, they have to understand, and we have to have the understanding of, like, how do we institute Israelite family values in our households so that we can be effective, an effective unit of this greater nation, and that our children can be, protected and fed and have the understanding about who they are and really cherish that knowledge and apply it to their lives and see it. In the same way how I go through that journey of maybe being a little resistant, as children can be, but then considering it and then applying it. And now it's no longer my parents' quote unquote religion or culture, but it's my experiences that I am going through, and I can see it and I can feel it. How do we foster that in a protective way so that they can, again, become effective and being able to, have our family units do the job it was meant to do, which is to be the building block of that nation and perpetuate itself from generation to generation, right? Israelite family values. So again, here's the time that I'm going to pause a second again. And again, I would love the sevens to say, do you agree? But I almost don't want yes and no questions. What I really want are open-ended questions. And I would like, what is your definition of family values? I know you said it before, but now let me know. Does this definition apply? Does this definition help? Is there something that you would add or take away? I would love to hear. Let me give it a second. Family values, Israelite family values. Okay, turn to Psalms 127, and I love this visual representation of what we're talking about. Psalms 127, a visual representation. I love this chapter too. All right, let's see. Psalms 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh, but in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the breads of sorrow, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. Happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. Amen. Psalms 127. I love this chapter. Well, family values, what does this have to do with that? I mean, just look at this. Really look at this. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. That should be self-explanatory. Everything that we do, we could have a great thought, we have a great idea, but if the foundation is not the God of Israel giving precepts, not the God of Israel's instructions, if he is not instrumental as the architect of building the foundation of our life, of our families, of our nation, of our decisions, if that's not there, then we labor in vain. We labor in vain, right? Again, just as we read earlier, consider the cost, consider what it's going to take, consider the fact that, if you're not one that's, able to take instructions, not one to really, be able to, humble yourselves. And although, you may have some good ideas in your own mind, but not to lean to your understanding, but to be humble, to lean to the understanding and to the instructions of our God and our Father, then you're going to have a tough time along this way. You're going to put up buildings and they're going to fall and tumble down because we have to connect ourselves with the architect, with the person who actually has called us out and woken us up out of sleep. And we have to have him be that foundation. So without that foundation, this nation will not grow, will not build, will not stand, will not withstand the test of time. So that's the very first thing. That's how we start out in Psalms 127. But then as we go through, we see what it leads into is like the children, right? Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. His reward for us is to have children. And that blessed and happy is the man that has his quiver full of them, right? It's sort of like the arrows that you have full of them, because consider what an arrow is. It's something that I project. I put the direction, I put the force, and then I'm able to hit my mark if I do everything correctly. So our children are those things that we foster and that we grow and that we support, and that if we do it just right, then we're able to have them go to the mark, which is into the future, beyond where I will even be, so that they can now be effective in building and fulfilling the will of the God of Israel at a time and a place that I will never enter. But because I've given it the right trajectory, and I've done things correctly, as the Lord and the God of Israel as the foundation and the motivation of what I'm doing, they are going to be effective in the future and be utilized by the God of Israel. And what a blessed gift it is to be a part of that whole process. We have an integral part in building the God of Israel's family, not just in today, but also even leading into the future. To me, that's when we talk about Israelite family values. Those are the things that allow that to happen. So the God of Israel, the law, statute, commandments gives us the foundation, gives us the direction, gives us maybe even the technique and the tools. But it is through our family values like, well, how do I do that? Right? How do I know what I'm trying to do. I know what I want to do, but how do I do that? What is the, how should I breathe? What's my stance? How much pressure do I give? When do I let go? Do I use one eye or two? Just all those, the technique of that, that's kind of the family values, right? The Supreme Council, Elder Shadrach, through the wisdom of the God of Israel, is giving us these the goal. We need to rebuild this nation. These are the precepts that we really need to foster in this nation. This is the goal that we have in building this nation and fulfilling the will that we will be that greatest nation, on this planet. That we continue to that is it. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to do. But now, as the marksman, I have to go through the motion to see, how do I do that? How do I make sure that I do that so that I reach that mark? And all of us could have different techniques. All of us could have it just slightly different, right? I don't think it's something that, when we're talking about family values, that we want to have legislated or we want to micromanage. It's not that. I don't want the micromanage to say these are, the exact things that you do on a daily basis. This time of the day, everyone does this. This time of the day, everybody does that. This time, everybody does. We don't want the micromanagement. What we do want is for each one to consider, how do I adopt? And go back to the definition. How do I uphold? How do I reinforce? And how do I pass on this knowledge, this wisdom, these precepts, these characteristics that we need, that we're learning here, week by week and day by day through the scriptures and through these lessons and through the priesthood and through the Supreme Council and through elder. How do I build my household so that they can be effective in us as a family and effective in us in raising our children in the next generation? How do I do that so that our children will reach their mark? I love 127 because, to me, in my mind, it's a visual representation of what we're talking about when we're talking about implementing family values in our households. All right, great. So now let's see a couple of examples in the scriptures. Let's turn to Joshua 24. Joshua chapter 24. All right. So, as we know, Joshua, leader of Israel after Moses, his main job was to go and subdue the land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so through many wars, through most of his life, went through and cleared the land. All the tribes together did not have rest until they were able to really clear everybody out of the land. As you know, one of the things is a couple of the tribes did not clear out everybody, and that ended up being a thorn in their side, but that's another story. The point is that was pretty much the job that Joshua had, and was pretty much successful in that. And so now at that point then, as they have subdued the land, and he also parsed out the land. This land is going to be for the tribe of Judah. This land is for the tribe of Benjamin. This is for Reuben. All the various tribes were given their allotments of land. Now it's time for them to have peace, to dwell in the land, and now to start building their families. Start to build their houses, start to build their businesses, start to build their schools, start to live life, start to apply the law, statutes, and commandments that Moses had given them a generation ago, to their forefathers, and now adopting and implementing family values. How do we implement them into our household, into our family? And so in Joshua 24 is sort of going over that summary of the journey that they've been on, put context about where they are, and then having a challenge, let's say, at the end, a challenge there at the end. And Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and called for the elders of Israel and for their heads and for their judges and for their officers, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said unto all the people, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood in old time, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nahor, and they served other gods. And I took your father Abraham from the other side of the flood, and led him throughout all the land of Canaan, and multiplied his seed, and gave him Isaac. And I gave unto Isaac Jacob and Esau, and gave unto Esau Mount Seir to possess it. But Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. I sent Moses also and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt according to that which I did among them. And afterward I brought you out. And I brought your fathers out of Egypt. And they came into the sea, and the Egyptians pursued after your fathers with chariots and horsemen unto the Red Sea. And when they cried unto the Lord, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea upon them and covered them. And your eyes have seen what I have done in Egypt, and ye dwell in the wilderness a long season. And I brought you into the land of Amorites, which dwelt on the other side of Jordan, and they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand, and that ye may possess their land, and I destroyed them before you. So it just sort of goes in where it's just recounting the history. Here's the history. Here's how we got here. And it's so important, right? I'm reflecting now of how my elder Shadrach, always has times where he goes through his history and he talks about, the battles, the challenges, the successes all along the way. And it's a good practice to kind of reflect of where you are and how you got there and what are the lessons that you've learned. It's important I think, for us to do that personally, but it's also even collectively so that we remind ourselves how we got here. And we can even remind ourselves of the guidance and blessings of our God and our Father in delivering us to get to this point. As we had mentioned, and I started out earlier, this path is not easy, but it allows us an opportunity to really see the power of our God and the foresight and the wisdom of our God as it plays out in our life, as he maneuvers us through and helps us work through those challenges. And you end up becoming a better person on the other side. You end up becoming very intimate and very knowledgeable and understanding and a witness to that experience, right? It's no longer a theory to you, but now you've seen what the God of Israel has done in your life, and now you can be a witness to others and a light to others. So it's a very valuable lesson for us to sometimes to go through the hardships. So, Joshua goes through this and shows that. And then the point I wanted to get at was, I'm going to start at verse 14. Right? I'm at Joshua chapter 24, start at verse 14. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye shall serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's one of my favorite things. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We're all Israelites. We all have this shared history. We all have this, to some degree, understanding about how the God of Israel chose us from generation to generation, allowed us to be successful over our enemies, to bring us to this point in time right here and now. And so right now, reaffirm what it is your intentions are going forward. Because, it's one of those things, if you don't stand for something, then you'll fall for anything, right? If I have this intention, if these are the instructions of rebuilding this nation, and I have my children that are arrows in my quiver, and I take them out, and then I just pull the bow, but I don't have direction, if I don't have focus, if I'm just doing it, well, yeah, just do it, right? We have no way of understanding how we are going to contribute to the path of our family going forward. We can see, although while it was happening, when we look back, that there was something guiding you along the way. There were doors that were being opened for you along the way to get you to this point in time of understanding of where you are. There was something that was there. At the time, you didn't see it. It seemed like they were just coincidences. It seemed like it was like, whoa, I kind of made it over that one. Even when you may have been deep prayer, God of Israel, help deliver me. And as soon as he delivers you, you're sort of like, oh, you move on to the next thing and kind of forget about. We can't forget about that because this tells our story. This is a part of the values that fuel the values that allows us then to be effective in us planning for the future. So in the same way that we can look back and see how there was a structure in place, by us as parents, as elders, as Israelites, the God of Israel is inviting us now to be instrumental in even crafting the future. We're partners with the God of Israel in helping craft the future. So if we end up not really putting and being deliberate about our focus about where we're going, then how effective are we going to be in reaching that mark, right? We have to really understand how do we apply the law, statutes, commandments, these precepts and these understanding and this history into our lives, into our households, so that we're effective in building ourselves, but also the next generation. So here we have Joshua making that proclamation. Based upon this foundation of what I've just spoken about, I'm going to make sure that for me and my house, we're moving forward and helping to craft the next generation to be diligent, respectful, obedient to our God and our Father. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Do you guys get that and see how that fits into Israelite family values? He's making a declaration, right? That this is the thing that I'm doing in my household. All right, put sevens in there if you understand what I'm saying. All right, let me give you another example. Have you guys heard about the Rechabites? Jeremiah 35. Jeremiah 35. All right. The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, saying, Go into the house of the Rechabites, and speak unto them, and bring them into the house of the Lord, into one of the chambers, and give them wine to drink. Then I took Jazaniah, the son of Jeremiah, the son of Habazaniah, and his brethren, and all his sons, and the whole house of the Rechabites. And I brought them into the house of the Lord, into the chamber of the sons of Hanan, the son of Igdaliah, a man of God, which was by the chamber of the princes, which was above the chamber of Messiah, the son of Shallum, the keeper of the door. And I set before the sons of the house of the Rechabites pots full of wine and cups, and I said unto them, Drink ye wine. But they said, We will drink no wine. For Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, commanded us, saying, Ye shall drink no wine, neither ye nor your sons forever. Neither shall ye build house, nor sow seed, nor plant vineyard, nor have any, but all your days ye shall dwell in tents, that ye may live many days in the land where ye be strangers. Thus have we obeyed the voice of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, in all that he has charged us, to drink no wine all our days, we, our wives, our sons, nor our daughters, nor to build house for us to dwell in, neither have we vineyard, nor field, nor seed. But we have dwelt in tents, and have obeyed and done according to all that Jonadab our father commanded us. But it came to pass, when Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came up into the land, that we said, Come, let us go to Jerusalem for fear of the army of the Chaldeans, and for fear of the army of the Syrians, so we dwell at Jerusalem. Then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, go and tell the men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, will ye not receive instruction to hearken to my words, saith the Lord? The words of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, that he commanded his sons not to drink wine are performed, for unto this day they drink none, but obey their father's commandment. Notwithstanding, I have spoken unto you, rising up early and speaking, but ye hearken not unto me. I have sent also unto you all my servants the prophets, rising up early and sending them, saying, return ye now every man from his evil way, and amend your doings, and go not after other gods to serve them, and ye shall dwell in the land which I have given to you and to your fathers. But ye have not inclined your ear, nor hearkened unto me. Because the sons of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, have performed the commandment of their father, which he commanded them, but this people hath not hearkened unto me. Therefore thus saith the Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will bring upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem all the evil that I have pronounced against them, because I have spoken unto them, but they have not heard, and I have called unto them, but they have not answered. And Jeremiah said unto the house of the Rechabites, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, because ye have obeyed the commandment of Jonadab your father, and kept all his precepts, and done according unto all that he has commanded you, therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Jonadab, the son of Rechab, shall not want a man to stand before me forever. Jeremiah chapter 35, the Rechabites. And hopefully you understand kind of what's being said there, in that we have the Rechabites, which is a family, an Israelite family. And obviously as Israelites, they keep the laws, statutes, commandments of the God of Israel. But above and beyond that, we have one in the generation of Rechab, Jonadab, who made this vow, right? This family value. Didn't come down on high. It didn't explain exactly why he made this vow. Could be a number of reasons why he might do that. But he made that vow for him and for his household. This is what they were going to do. In this household, we do not drink wine. And it wasn't just on this, but it was on, we're talking about generations after. We're talking about, this is like hundreds of years after when that vow was made. In this household, we're going to do so-and-so. In this case, it was not drink wine. And that was taught to the children, and then to the children's children, then to the children's children, even so much so that it impressed the God of Israel to say, wow, the values that this household has implemented so strong that even years later, generations later, the children are still like, we are Rechabites, and this is something we do not do. And even though the prophet Jeremiah was bringing them in to say, hey, here, drink wine, they're like, no, we that's not what we do, right? Our family values does not permit us to do that. The God of Israel was so impressed that he said that you will always stand before me as a family. The generation will always be there. And so I said to say that, here's an example again of going above and beyond. Not just for above and beyond's sake. I'm sure there was a purpose at that time for what this was for. But it was the idea again of, here's some family values that go above and beyond the what the instructions were that were coming from above, because they really wanted to have the structure in place that will allow them to be successful as a family. And we see how much they really benefited from that in the long run. When we talk about implementing family values in your household, we're talking about something very similar. What I want to do now, and this is where I'm going to need your help now, is to come into this and to see what are some of the values, right, that we should be looking at in our households. What are some of the values? Now, some of you guys earlier, when I first started, I asked that question, and I said, what if you're, as an Israelite, if I ask you the question, what are your family values? What are some of the things you listed? So I look forward to see what you listed. So I have some things here, and again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a few things that pops into my mind. Some things that I would love to even get some feedback on from you as well. And also, this is kind of where I want to have that some of these discussions. So one of the first things, as an Israelite household, when it talks about family values, things that I want to make sure that it's very clear that I, as children, as our household, as people looking at our household, that we have a very strong pattern of spiritual practice, right? That our spirituality is strong, so that we have a period of family prayer, a period of family Bible study, that we have a period of us, again, obviously, the law, statutes, commandments, and keeping the holy days, but even beyond that, that we are connecting together in one accord as a family. And that family takes many forms, right? It could be husband and wife and children. It could be, an individual for now. It could be an individual with, a single parent household, or it could be, a brother and sister living together. It could be, again, but whatever the structure is, it's just trying to form like, these are the things that we do, right? This is what we do. And we want to make sure that, and those are commitments that we have. So one of the things, again, that we look at when we're talking about rebuilding us as a nation, in some ways, we look at and see the larger society, the Jacobites, right? The black community in particular, the world generally, but the black community in particular, what are some of the values that we may look at when we look at the black community, right? And some of the values that we have, there's a lot of times that aren't. A lot of times it's sort of, free for all. It's not necessarily. It's just sort of, real general, not necessarily, if anything, instructions that are given. So it's almost like every generation has to sort of make it up as they go along or figure it out as they go. That is not the intention that the God of Israel had meant. It was meant for us to have strong values that gets disseminated through our family structures. And so one of them specifically, strong spirituality. One of the commandments that we have, again, even as he was building, the God of Israel was building us as a nation coming out of Egypt, is like, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Not just lip service, but on your hearts. And press them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, or when you walk down the road, or when you lie down, and when you get up. Make sure that these are things that are one of the most important things that you can instill upon your children is the strong spirituality. So one of the questions that comes up sometime is, okay, we have this pattern of prayer or Bible study that we would have, maybe it's daily, maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly. When you have a pattern like that, do you have the fear of maybe it being mechanical? Does it become mechanical, right? Does it be like, okay, it's Tuesday, time for family Bible study? Does it become just a thing where you go through the motions, but it's not really something that's really affecting you, or you're not really into it as much as possible? Is that a fear, right? Just, add some comments. I'd love to hear what you think about that. I think it can be. But I think also it's something that if you ever find yourself in that way of being in a rut, one of the things that you can definitely do is just try to change it up. Just like anything else that you do as far as a pattern, if you just do the same thing every time, yeah, I think it do run the risk of it being mechanical. You do run the risk of sort of losing that luster. But if you then be real deliberate about maybe changing something up, maybe going outside and having Bible study in the park somewhere, or a prayer out somewhere in the park, or doing something a little bit different than what you're normally doing, sometimes that can really spark you. But if you ever have that fear or have gone through that experience of sort of going through the mechanics, what are some of the things that you have done in order to really, sort of change it up and bring back that joy, that excitement about it, and not just let it become, just something you do, but not necessarily something you have your heart into it. We don't want to fall into that rut. There have been so many lessons given about our forefathers who did exactly that. They were going through the motions of, going to the temple, going through the motions of keeping the feast days. And the God of Israel says, I don't honor your feast because, I know your heart's not into it. Right? You praise me with your mouth, but your heart is not really there. We don't ever fall into that into that category. We want to make sure that we're very deliberate, but also and very consistent. But at the same time, we always want to keep it fresh. We always want to remind ourselves of exactly what we're doing and do it in a joyful way. So we got to be real creative about that. So if people have suggestions on how we can do that, how to keep this as a family value in our households, but allow ourselves and our children at various stages to always be engaged, to always be excited, to always, sort of make it fun and purposeful. Put some comments there. Again, this is a group thing. We want to make sure that we all are helping one another, as we are trying to really have strong family values built within our households. So that's number one. We cannot go anywhere without that unless the Lord builds it. It's not going to be successful. So we want to make sure that's there and that we and our children really understand how strong and important that really is. But here's another example where I think it can be maybe a little clearer why this sort of value family value can be important for us to really talk about. Let's talk about for a second diet and health. Diet and health. So if I ask you as a family value, where does diet come in? How does diet play out in your family values? Obviously, one of the things, very clear, very plain, we follow the law, statutes, commandments as Israelites. Therefore, we don't eat any unclean thing, right? And that's Israelite 101. So no swine or pork products, no nothing that's unclean. We make sure, right, whenever we read labels, when we go out to restaurants, we ask questions, make sure it's not contaminated or anything like that, because we want to make sure that we are not, affecting our spirituality by consuming unclean foods, right? I think about even Peter, right, when he was given that vision, which had nothing to do with unclean foods. That was just used as an analogy to talk about the Gentiles. Even when the word came to say, hey, kill and eat these unclean beasts, he said, not so, Lord, for I've never eaten any unclean thing. It's such a part of his family value, such a part of who he was, that even a voice could come down from heaven, right? The God of Israel could come down from heaven in his voice and say, eat this thing. He's like, no, I can't do that. I can't. I'm obedient and I'll do whatever, but that's unclean. I could never eat any unclean thing. That's how strong it is, as a part of him. So that's fine. That's great. But when it comes to our family values, your family values, when it comes to diet and health, does it stop there? Does it stop there? Like, just as long as I'm not eating unclean foods, then we're good. And think about that. Is it sufficient as an Israelite to not eat unclean foods, but to still have an unhealthy diet that's going to physically hurt us? And if this is our temple, then obviously that can have some risk of maybe spiritually hurting us. Is that right? Right? Can I eat whatever I want as long as it's not unclean? Right? Do there need to be some values that you have inside your household, right? When it comes to what you eat, what you consume, when it comes to our health, when it comes to obesity, or all those things that come along with it. And these are things that plague us in the Black community. Our diet plagues us in our community. That does a lot to do with the disparities in health outcomes, is because of our unhealthy diet. But now there's no law specifically that says, thou shalt have a healthy diet. And, I don't think that's something that should be legislated, from the Supreme Council to say you should have a healthy diet. But it probably is something that we could discuss, probably something that you could consider, talking about in your household, about these are the things that we will or don't do as a household. I think, again, I'm not talking about micromanaging, right? I don't want to micromanage everything that you do, but it still is, important, I think, for us, again, to have standards and have values that we have instilled within our households. Because if we don't do that for ourselves, if we don't do that for our children, then we run the risk of someone else doing it for us. We're influenced by the values of outside because there's nothing inside telling us anything else different, right? And I don't know if the instruction of clean and unclean really gets to that point of being able to really talk about healthy diets, whatever that means, So that's an example where I think, it's worth a discussion, within us as parents, as households, to be able to think about, what is acceptable. And it's not necessarily one is right, one is wrong, but I think we need to be deliberate because the consequences of silence, I think, are really grave. And we want to make sure that all of us are as healthy as we can be, so we can be as successful as we can be, and again, the rebuilding of our nation and the restoring of our family. Okay, so I'd love to hear comments on that. What do you think about diet and health when it comes to Israelite values in your household? Here's another thing. It's just kind of a small thing, but I think it's emblematic of probably some larger issues in our community. A respect of elders. A respect of elders. I remember when my son was taking music lessons, and he's young, maybe 9, 10 years old, maybe a little bit younger, and his music teacher, would tell him, who was an older lady, would tell him, just call me by my first name, and we were like, no, that's not value. We don't. We teach our children respect for their elders, and one way of exhibiting that respect is Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, or Uncle so-and-so, or Auntie so-and-so, really make sure. And, we can be, you two can be as cordial as you want to be, but we keep that line of respect between the two. Again, it's maybe a small thing, but I think that level of respect, that standard that we have as a household, needs to be very clear that people outside may, become friends and buddies, from one generation to the other. And, but we still keep that line of respect, and especially addressing elders. So that's a small thing, but I think that's something that's really, emblematic again of sort of like a standard that you would have in your household that we have in our household. And again, I don't think it's right or wrong. It's just again a standard that we may have. In a lot of ways, we were talking about raising children, and this can be a very sensitive topic, right? We talk about some of these things. We can talk about as far as education or career or all these various things. It's all sort of tied together, and it really has to do with being able to demonstrate, as well as high expectations that we have for ourselves, as well as high expectations that we have for our children. And it's important again that we kind of can talk about these things so that we can kind of see that if we're not doing that, then we and our children and our households are now then being at the risk of adopting some of those standards that may be out in the world. And we want to make sure that we're deliberate about that these are some of the characteristics that we're going to really have to foster and figure out ways that we really bring it to the forefront in our households, and as well as instilling them within our children. There are many other things that we can talk about when it comes to, again, just the values that we apply. And again, some of the other things, how do we deal with the community that's around us? How do we do it finances, in our households? How do we, instill love and kindness in our children, as well as, self-love about themselves? As we've gone through these past 400 years, and it's been none of us have gone through this time period of 400 years of enslavement, generation after generation of oppression, of being blind to who we are, of living a false life, with mirroring the people that are around us, that we haven't, in some ways been traumatized in so many ways. And so, as we are coming into this truth and our eyes are being open to this truth, how do we deal with that stress? A lot of these things we talk about is building this perfect household so we can raise these perfect children. And it's like, and that's not what I'm trying to say at all. Because I know, again, we look through the scriptures, I can't find a perfect household. But I think, there still is that striving, for us to really try our best to give our children and ourselves as much love, compassion, patience, but yet instill, focus and purpose in order for us to build ourselves up to that worthy calling of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. right, of that worthy calling is that we are the greatest people on earth. We have been chosen by the greatest God on earth. And so it's important for us that, again, unless the God of Israel builds it, unless he allows this to happen, we will not be successful. And so we want to do our part to make sure we're building ourselves up on the outside and on the inside all the way through so that we can be effective tools in his service. So so it's important that, as we deal with this, that we really address the stress and trauma that we go through and some of the things that we're imperfect. So we're going to make mistakes along the way, but we continue to work on ourselves, continue to understand, how do we deal with the stress of life, right? None of us are perfect, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to be, short-fused, or we're going to go through various things. But how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that and teach our children to deal with the stress of life and how to deal with things that can be very stressful to them and maybe even take them off their path? Or, how do you deal with mistakes or problems or things like that you may deal with? All those things are, again, conversations, I think, that we could have as parents, conversations that we can have, as households, even conversations with children as well. So I'm out of time, but I'm really thankful again for this opportunity to speak with you again about family values, sort of looking at and seeing, what is it that we can do as a family so that we can ensure that we are a contributing force and factor to rebuilding this nation and restoring this family. I hope you had a great day. I look forward to hearing from you. In the fashion of my forefathers, I salute you. Hear, Israel, Lord our God, Lord is one. Peace.
I'm trying to run away from all the people I face it, but they just keep coming, so I just keep running, I'm racing. Maybe I should look up to my Father and make some changes. I'm racing sort of meeting so that we can face it. Instead of running away, I'm a priest of the highest mountains. So when people look to the water, they'll see the fountain of youth. You are the only one that can save me from all of these horrible dudes keeping me away from you. I need to find God in a heavenly place, but I've been looking and I've never seen someone rephrase what they always tell me, because I can understand what people go through when they're lost and they can't find their way. I'm going in a circle, a cycle really. I'm trying to reach my heavenly Father, why can't anyone hear me? Hopefully God, you can see me right. I'm trying to reach you, I just need to find some light. Life is sometimes really easy to take for granted. So when you don't feel tall and you are really feeling slanted, your light could've flew away like a sparrow, because the light got the path to avoid his wrath and lead the straight and narrow. He is real. I hope that whoever you are, I'll be able to look upon the stars and still see the oohs and ahs that I always felt when I gazed afar, trying to make a wish from a shooting star. In the end, I wanna be doing what's right, that's right, but left keeps putting up a fight. So if you could be there, alright, whatever you ask, I'm here, man, we could be tight. I know this letter isn't formal and I don't wanna have to go put on a suit and tie. Trust me, Father, you help see me through. They try to give me all the lies, you gave me nothing but the truth. So please, oh God, are you really blessing an Israelite to big it not to be? That is the question as I ponder over the stars bright, hoping one day I can find my light. Life is sometimes really easy to take for granted. So when you don't feel tall and you are really feeling slanted,